Shabbat Shalom, family. May Yahweh bless all who are listening to this teaching. Let's begin with the blowing of the shofar, followed by an opening prayer. Yahweh, we bless your holy name as we gather together on this Shabbat. Thank you for giving us life in abundance and wealth in all areas. We ask you for more revelation, understanding, and wisdom. May the teachings we receive be magnified. May we all fasten our eyes, ears, and hearts towards you, and may we all receive the spiritual and natural healing in our lives. Thank you for the year 5784, the year of the open door. In Yahushua HaMashiach, Amen. I will be mentioning a few verses during this teaching, and I encourage you to take note of them and read them afterwards. So, with the past teachings on wisdom and wealth in all areas of our life, in order to see wisdom and wealth come to fruition in your personal life, it first comes with unlearning the ways of the world, separating yourselves from this world's identities and doing the will of Yahweh. Once you are ready to see and open to know the truth written by the Most High, Yahweh, that is when Yahweh will reveal to you the treasures only his precious children have access to. Remember, Yahweh does not operate the same way the world runs. And if your heart is softened to continually receive the good news, then you will be blessed beyond measure. So these past few weeks, we've all been learning about what it means to truly have wisdom, wisdom that is not from this world, but wisdom that is from the Creator of all, Yahweh. Yahweh is his name, YHWH, or Isaiah 42, 8-9. With Yahweh's wisdom, we are also gifted with Yahweh's wealth in all areas of life, in the natural and spiritual. Yahweh created you and I, and Yahweh ensures that we are blessed with all we need and more. You and I won't ever lack anything when we have our hope in our life in the Creator of all things, that is in Yahweh's hands. There are miracles happening all around us and within us 24/7, day and night. Miracles from Yahweh are moving mountains. However, it is up to you and I to see Yahweh's hand over everything in life, here on earth and for eternity. So in 2 weeks, on March 23rd to the 24th, from Saturday evening to Sunday evening, a feast known as Purim will occur. It is important to know that Purim is not a feast instructed by Yahweh for us to follow. Purim is actually a feast established by mankind. One of Yahushua's relatives, to be more exact, that relative's name was Mordecai, from the tribe of Benjamin. I want to mention this side note that there are 7 total feasts mentioned in the scriptures, instructed from Yahweh to his followers when Moshe was with Yahweh on Mount Sinai. Mount Sinai is where all the instructions and commandments were given. Over the next few months, we will dive into the 7 feasts we are to follow, which are known as the Feast of Passover, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the Feast of First Fruits, the Feast of Pentecost, the Feast of Trumpets, the Feast of Atonement, and the Feast of Tabernacles. If you are a child of Yahweh, we encourage you to seek the importance in each of these feasts, as it plays a huge role in our relationship with Yahweh. If you truly want to know your heavenly Abba on a whole other level, seek and you will find an abundance of revelations. Today, we will be learning about the Feast of Purim and how it applies to us. Before we discover how it relates to our sovereign King Yahweh and to our brothers and sisters in Yahweh, we first must gather understanding, knowledge, wisdom from this book. Let's start with uncovering the background to the book of Hadassah, or the book of Esther, so that everyone is on the same page. I want to make sure everyone is aware, although the feast Purim is established by mankind, Purim is indeed mentioned in the book of Hadassah. Hadassah is the cousin of Mordecai. While Mordecai is from the tribe of Benjamin, like I mentioned earlier, Hadassah is from the tribe of Yehudah. An interesting fact of Hadassah is that she is the great-grandchild of Jesse, King David's father, the one who took Goliath down, also known as one of the ancestors of Yahushua. The reason why Hadassah is most commonly known for her false name, Esther, came about because Mordecai instructed her to conceal her identity by using a name that means hidden in Hebrew, but means myrtle leaf or star in the ancient Persian language. One significant aspect of the book is that Yahweh's name is nowhere found in this book. Every other book, whether it is considered canonical or not, contains Yahweh's name in the original language. Now, depending on the Bibles you use, you may not be exposed to or learn Yahweh's name because majority of the translations of the Holy Scriptures hide Yahweh's holy name with titles that are used for royal monarchy and false idols. For example, the titles God and Lord are both used for mankind and demonic fallen angels, also known as gods. Shemot or Exodus 34:14. If you are completely new to this information, if you desire to seek, please, and honor Yahweh, we encourage you to go back to our first teachings to learn more. Now, Purim is a Hebrew word meaning to cast lots. Casting lots is similar to throwing dice in today's modern world. Casting lots were often used in ancient times, and you will come across the practice of casting lots in the scriptures. And that is because it was how people determined important decisions and events. And the Feast of Purim is called in the English language the Feast of Casting Lots, because the fate of the followers of Yahweh were and are not determined by anyone, even such as someone named Haman, who casted lots to destroy the lives of the Jews during this time period. But because Yahweh's hand covered them with favor and protection. Mishle, or Proverbs 16:33. Yahweh will turn something that was meant for evil into a massive blessing for his children. And this is what the book of Hadassah and the Feast of Purim is all about. Trusting in Yahweh no matter what, holding on to your faith in him, fearing no man, regardless of their earthly title or position. Psalms 22:27. If you have not read the book of Hadassah, we encourage you to do so. It is extremely short, only 10 chapters, and full of Yahweh's presence. Now let's turn to the book of Hadassah, and before we begin reading, for those who have yet to read this book or know anything about this book, the events in the book of Hadassah were during the Medo-Persian Empire. Both Persians and Macedonians came together, defeating what was known as the Babylonian Empire. So during this time period, the followers of Yahweh, known as the Jews, were living in foreign lands due to the exile from Jerusalem during the Babylonian Empire. To give you an idea, The Medo-Persian Empire was over 127 provinces in a few countries within West Asia, East Europe, and Northeast Africa. The king of Persia during this time was King Ahasuerus, and King Ahasuerus was married to Queen Vashti, who is said to be the great-granddaughter of the king Nebuchadnezzar, the king mentioned in the book of Daniel. When you read the early scriptures, you will learn more about these rulers, who their parents and grandparents were, and the symbolism in the book of Hadassah will literally be magnified. King Ahasuerus and Queen Vashti were most likely worshippers of idols, known as the ancient Zoroastrianism religion. There are some similarities with Zoroastrianism found in Vedic traditions within Hinduism. So in the beginning of the book of Hadassah, King Ahasuerus, the king of Persia, was extremely wealthy. He showcased his kingdom's wealth for 180 days in the capital of the Persian Empire, a city known as Shushan. And afterwards, he had a grand banquet where all the royals of the Medes or Macedonians, his partners in the Medo-Persian Empire, were gathered. This grand banquet held by King of Persia, Ahasuerus, lasted for 7 days inside of his palace. And on the 7th day, he ordered Queen Vashti to join him and his peers to show them her beauty. However, Queen Vashti refused to present herself before the king and amongst the other royals in their kingdom. There are some interpretations as to why she refused, but the common ones are because her skin broke out with leprosy, and the other is she didn't want to be shown to a bunch of drunks. Keep in mind, when a king ordered someone to do something, it was to be done. The fact that Queen Vashti disobeyed the king's command to go to the banquet where the royals of the empire, their partners, were also at, resulted in Queen Vashti losing her status and her crown. Queen Vashti lost the respect of the royals of Persia and the Medes. This caused King Ahasuerus to seek a replacement, another queen. The act of honoring, respecting, and following the orders of the husband is something valuable, especially in those days. It did not matter if someone held a royal title or not. This was the standard. What Queen Vashti did not only was disrespectful, but it was not honoring her husband, the king of Persia, Ahasuerus. Whoever was to replace Queen Vashti was to embody characteristics similar to the bride of Yahushua. There is something special and powerful when we honor, respect, and follow Yahweh in his ways. When we decide to dishonor, disobey, and simply choose not to follow, seek, or please Yahweh, there are consequences as a direct result of those decisions you and I make. Yaakov or James 1:12. And Queen Vashti paid her price. She lost her portion of the kingdom, and some other bride eventually took her place. Don't be a Queen Vashti. Don't make decisions that will result in you losing the gift to experience the kingdom of Yahweh. You and I need to live and breathe the message in Mishle or Proverbs 31. That is not just a message about an earthly wife. It is the bride of Yahushua, all of us. Every single one of you needs to step into that position. We are of the highest royalty. The creator of all is our groom. And that comes with the most royal and the highest standard. If you are a Jew coming to know Yahushua, or you have been grafted into the family of Yahweh, this book of Hadassah and all the books of the scriptures should be written on your heart because it is our family's history and truth. So when the news came out that Queen Vashti went out against the king's orders and that the king Ahasuerus was needing a new bride, an order was sent out noting all young women who are virgins are to be brought to the king's palace immediately. One of the king Ahasuerus' eunuchs, Haggai, was in charge of the women. Haggai was responsible for preparing the young women to meet King Ahasuerus. Now, eunuchs being either servants, advisors, or guards for people in power in ancient times were often found without their private parts. This was to ensure their professionalism and loyalty to the people in power would not be destroyed by sexual desire, which of course was done by surgical procedures known as castration. And we can see that this is still being done today, but for other reasons. Once all the virgin women came into King Ahasuerus' palace, one particular woman stood out amongst all of them, and her name was presented to the eunuch Haggai as Esther, Esther of Shushan. When Hadassah introduced herself with an alias, Esther, the eunuchs assumed Hadassah was Persian, not a Jew. Keep in mind, Hadassah kept a promise with Mordecai, her cousin, to never reveal her identity, her true identity, to anyone. Mordecai, being the only guardian and family of Hadassah, as she was an orphan, stayed in close proximity to the palace to keep watch. Hadassah received instant favor from Haggai, and the eunuchs started pampering and spoiling her with beauty treatments, food of the royals, servants, and housing in the same place the king's female relatives also lived in. That was until she is to meet with King Ahasuerus. Typically, the preparations for the wives were to be a 12-month period, but Hadassah, being anointed by Yahweh, was seen exceptionally from the other wives and was taken to meet King Ahasuerus in the 10th month instead of the 12th. The moment Hadassah went before King Ahasuerus, he found Hadassah superior in all aspects compared to the other wives, and granted her the position of reigning alongside him as Queen Esther. From the moment Hadassah was taken into custody to the timing of her royal title as Queen Esther, Mordecai ensured he was always nearby. Being a follower of Yahweh in foreign lands, amongst people and rulers who worship false idols, is not exactly ideal. People would be hanged on a tree for any minor reason, but especially if they are found to be followers of Yahweh. One day, while Mordecai was by the palace gates, Mordecai overheard a couple guards planning to get rid of King Ahasuerus. Mordecai was able to inform Hadassah about the plan, and once the discovery was confirmed to be true, the two guards were hanged on a tree, and King Ahasuerus knew that Mordecai was the one who brought this matter to their attention. There was a level of gratitude from King Ahasuerus to Mordecai because of this event, but no gesture to thank Mordecai was done. Now let's turn to chapter 3 in the book of Hadassah. We will read verses 2 to 6. So in the book of Hadassah or Esther, chapter 3, verses 2 to 6. And all the king's servants who were in the king's gate were bowing and worshiping Haman, for the king had so commanded for him. But Mordecai did not bow nor worship, and the king's servants who were at the gate of the king said to Mordecai, "Why do you disobey the king's command?" And it happened, when they spoke daily to him, and he did not listen to them, they told Haman to see if Mordecai's matters would stand. for he had told them that he was a Jew. And when Haman saw that Mordecai did not bow nor worship him, then Haman was filled with fury, and it was light in his eyes to reach forth a hand against Mordecai alone. For they had revealed to him Mordecai's people. And Haman sought to destroy all the Jews in all the kingdom of Ahasuerus, the people of Mordecai. I mentioned the name of Haman earlier, and now we just saw what triggered Haman. For those who do not know, Haman was an Amalekite, and Amalekites have always acted in direct opposition to Yahweh. Amalekites are known to reject Yahweh and have a desire to destroy Yahweh's children. You can now understand why Haman grew hatred against the children of Yahweh. For they did not fear man, nor did they submit to bowing or worshiping people. Now Haman was promoted to the highest position, being the right-hand man to King Ahasuerus, acting as a chief minister to King Ahasuerus. So Haman, knowing the history of his people, the Amalekites and the Jews, his identity in his earthly title and position, and being filled with evil, Haman conspired to destroy the Jews with someone who practiced divination and practices casting lots. It took exactly 1 year before the date to wipe out the Jews was revealed to the diviner and Haman. Haman, being King Ahasuerus' right-hand man, had the power and authority to dictate orders if the king agreed. With the year of planning, Haman finally was able to present the idea without mentioning it was the Jews who were to be destroyed. To which King Ahasuerus agreed, handing over Haman his ring to officially seal this order. Not long after, all the scribes were instructed to write a formal communication about the destruction of the Jews, and it was sent out into all the provinces within their kingdom and in the province's own language. Let's now read what it says in chapter 3, verse 13. And the documents were sent by the runners into all the king's provinces to destroy, to kill, and to cause to perish all Jews, both young and old, little children and women, in 1 day, on the 13th of the 12th month, which is the month Adar, and to take what they owned for a prize. When the order to destroy the Jews was released, Jews from all provinces began mourning, fasting, weeping, wailing, and many were wearing sackcloths and covered in ashes. All throughout the early scriptures, you will come across people who presented themselves like this at one point. This outward appearance and expression was not just because of a passing of a loved one, but because the most common reason is that they would do it to express their inner distress and to display their repentance and humility before Yahweh. Mind you, while all of this was happening, King Ahasuerus and Queen Esther had no knowledge of the order to destroy the Jews. Mordecai, being one of the Jews who were mourning, fasting, weeping, wailing, and wearing sackcloths and covered in ashes, came before the palace of King Ahasuerus and Queen Esther and was heard by the helpers of Queen Esther. Hadassah, not having an idea as to why her cousin Mordecai was mourning, was concerned and tried offering him some new clothes. Mordecai refused the help, and Hadassah then summoned one of the king's helpers to find out what was going on. Now let's go to chapter 4, verses 7 to 8. And Mordecai told him everything that had happened to him and exactly how much silver Haman had promised to put in the royal treasury for the destruction of the Jews. He also gave him a copy of the decree for their destruction issued in Shushan, so that he could show it to Esther, explain it to her, and then instruct her to approach the king, intercede with him, and implore his favor on behalf of her people. The thing is, Hadassah had not been called by the king for 30 days. Nobody was to appear before the king unless the king summoned that person. If a person was to show themselves before the king, they could be put to death unless the king were to receive them with a gold scepter to keep that person alive. Hadassah, knowing all these things, explained the situation to Mordecai. Now let's read what Mordecai responded to Hadassah in chapter 4, verse 13 to 14. Do not think within yourself to escape in the sovereign's palace any more than all the other Yehudim. For if you keep entirely silent at this time, relief and deliverance shall arise for the Yehudim from another place, while you and your father's house perish. And who knows whether you have come to the reign for such a time as this. We can see here now when the children of Yahweh, when you and I are in distress, our lives seem to not be going as planned, an unexpected obstacle is headed our way, and there seems to be no way out. You and I need to understand that there is power in seeking Yahweh. Mourning, weeping, wailing, simply releasing your heartache and pain, surrounding yourself with family and community, fasting, abstaining from your natural flesh's desires, and consuming the bread and the water from Yahweh alone is powerful. Mourning, weeping, wailing, and fasting supports Yahweh's children, you and I, during times of hurt, in times of uncertainty, but fasting is key in preparing Yahweh's children. Fasting is not made for the natural reasoning to lose weight or fat, but fasting comes from Yahweh. Fasting is a spiritual activity, and Yahweh shows us how fasting with purpose, intention, and the desire to work with Yahweh in what He has planned for you and I is the key to all questions and events in life that which you do not have an answer for. Act of Emissaries of Yahushua, or Acts, the book of Acts, chapter 13, verse 2 to 3. Now go to chapter 4 in the book of Hadassah, verses 15 to 16. Hadassah had them return this answer to Mordecai. Go assemble all the Jews to be found in Shushan, and have them fast for me, neither eating nor drinking for 3 days, night and day. Also I and the girls attending me will fast the same way. Then I will go into the king, which is against the law, and if I perish, I perish. Then Mordecai went his way and did everything Hadassah had ordered him to do. We can see here how Hadassah knew exactly what she had to do to prepare in the natural and spiritual for what is ahead. Fasting is something we should do. Fasting is something we should do to abstain from our flesh's desires, such as our cravings, binge watching, or whatever other pleasure you have in your daily routines. Fasting is about fastening our eyes, our ears, our hearts to Yahweh alone. Consuming Yahweh's foods, His bread and living water, means reading His word, listening to His teachings, hearing His voice, following in His path, fellowshipping with your brothers and sisters, and focusing our lives to Yahweh, because it is only Yahweh who can sustain, empower, equip, and pour life into you. We can see all throughout the scriptures how whenever one was led to fast, it was because something beyond the natural realm was in the works. If you are led to fast or know someone is being led to fast, let them fast in peace and support them. Because Yahweh's Ruach is leading and telling them to fast. Don't allow the enemy to turn you into a tempter by tempting a brother or sister while they are fasting. Let's now read chapter 5, verses 1 to 4. And it happened on the third day that Esther put on royal clothing and stood in the inner court of the king's house, before the king's inner house. And the king was sitting on his royal throne in the royal house, in front of the gate of the house. And it happened, when the king saw Esther the queen standing in the court, she lifted up in grace in his eyes. And the king held out the golden scepter that was in his hand to Esther. And Esther drew near and touched the top of the scepter. And the king said to her, "What shall be done to you, O Queen Esther? And what is your request? It will be given to you, even up to half of the kingdom." And Esther answered, "If it seems good to the king, let the king and Haman come today to the banquet which I have prepared for him." Isn't this amazing? You can interpret these passages a few different ways, but I want to just point out a couple. One, fasting is done by the children of Yahweh. The fasting done by the children of Yahweh is shown to prepare Hadassah for such a time. 2, when it speaks about the king sitting on his royal throne and seeing his queen standing in the court, and the queen was lifted up in grace in his eyes, this literally foreshadows the bride of Yahushua, meeting him face to face in his heavenly kingdom. Before you received Yahushua, or before you were grafted into Yahweh's family, you already had the favor and grace all around you, and you are destined to be his called and chosen son or daughter. King Ahasuerus tells Queen Esther that she can receive up to half of the kingdom. Brothers and sisters, you and I have received and are awaiting the time to receive our full portion in Yahweh's kingdom. Ruach Yahweh can operate through you here on earth as it is in heaven. So let Yahweh work through you and be a blessing. So after Hadassah presented herself to the king, she requested that the king and Haman attend a banquet that Hadassah is to hold for them in her quarters. King Ahasuerus and Haman both agreed. They attended the banquet and they were both satisfied. Hadassah had not yet informed King Ahasuerus of what order Haman had for the Jews' destruction. Rather, she requested the king and Haman to attend a second banquet. Haman was on cloud 9 because he was invited to Queen Esther's banquet. That meant a lot. However, that same day, not long after the first banquet, Haman came across Mordecai, who had refused to, of course, pay honor and or show respect to Haman. Although Haman wanted to hurt Mordecai, Haman chose to go home and share the details of the banquet with his family and his friends. Now go to chapter 5, verses 12 to 14. Indeed, Haman added, Esther the queen let nobody into the banquet with the king that she had prepared except myself. And tomorrow too I am invited by her together with the king. Yet none of this does me any good at all as long as I keep seeing Mordecai the Jew remaining seated at the king's gate. At this, Zedesh, his wife, and all his friends said to him, Have a gallows 75 feet high constructed, and in the morning speak to the king about having Mordecai hanged on it. Then go in and enjoy yourself with the king at the banquet. Haman liked the idea, so he had a gallows made. The suspense that follows in this story is unreal. Imagine being Hadassah or Mordecai, knowing that Yahweh put you in a position to steward over a person or steward over a group of people, specifically Yahweh's children, and your enemy is plotting so many ways to destroy you. Hadassah could have informed the king about Haman's plans that same day about murdering all the Jews. But patience and endurance is the fruit of Ruach YHWH. Galatians 5:22-23. We will now close in prayer. Yahweh, thank you for sharing with us the stories of our family. We are excited to meet you face to face and experience eternity with you, Yahushua. Ruach YHWH, reveal to us throughout the night and the coming days what you have in store for us in this season. Lead us into what and how we should prepare. We know you are working miracles all around us for our own blessing and for your kingdom. Blessed is your name, Yahweh, and Yahushua HaMashiach. Amen.